Joining me now is Yan Liang. She's an economics professor at Willamette University in Portland, Oregon. Just watching Ann Chang's story there, listening to some of the people she interviewed. Life is more boring. I just want to stay home. You just have to think these COVID outbreaks are going to impact the economies on the mainland and in Hong Kong as well. What are we seeing so far? What do you expect to see?
Right. Great to talk to you, Mike. So from what and from what we have read in the March data, for example, for the PMI, the Purchasing Manager Index, we've seen clear contraction of a lot of the manufacturing and also the service activities. The manufacturing PMI dipped down to 49.5, and the non-manufacturing PMI dipped down to 48.4. And so any number that is below 50 indicates a contraction. And so the service sector, the PMI fell to 46.7. So that's a clear contraction and due to this COVID and lockdown. So I think in March, we have seen lockdowns in Jilin province, in Dongguan city, in Shenzhen, or in the south. And now we're seeing Shanghai has been in the strict lockdown. So I think what is clear is that the economic impact have been negative, and that would extend to next month or even next quarter.
Yeah, you mentioned Shanghai. It looked like the quarantine was going to be lifted. Now it's still continuing. That lockdown, will we see more supply chain disruptions as well, do you think?
Yes, absolutely. So we have heard that, for example, Tesla has suspended production last week twice, and SMAC is still operating, but albeit at a reduced scale. So it's clear that a lot of these industrial high-tech production comes to a halt or at a lower scale because of the lockdown and also supply chain issues.
Yeah, you kind of see it as sort of like an octopus. It has tentacles that go in so many different directions. We're going to talk a little bit about the Qingming Festival in the next segment, but obviously that's going to impact travel for that as well. There are so many different sectors that can be impacted by COVID and an outbreak like this, right?
Yes, absolutely. So as I mentioned, the service sector is taking a hard hit. So I think, the Qingming Festival, typically, people travel to go back to their hometown. Now that it's not going to happen, I think so, or at a very restricted scale. So all of these would affect the service sector going forward. Now, Shanghai is also a financial hub. So now companies are really being innovative. They're having the closed loop management where employees are giving cash incentives to camp out in their office in order to run the business as usual. So I think the economic impacts are significant, but hopefully business will be able to cope, and also hopefully the government will hand out more support, not only that all these supplies of food from other places, which is great in medical supplies, but I think the government needs to do more. For example, give more cash disbursements to local residents who still have rent to pay, utility to pay, and also maybe nationalize the paychecks for the payrolls, right, for some of the local companies that are struggling.
All right, Yan Liang, always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much for your insights.